government debt is huge. I mean, historically huge.
Absolutely.
And because that number is so astronomical, we're talking nearly 100% of GDP in a lot of places, everyone seems to have that one simple fix.
Oh, yeah. Cancel it. Tax the rich.
Just stop borrowing. All of those.
It's the ultimate fiscal fantasy, isn't it? The idea that the debt can just, poof, vanish without any real ripple effect.
Right. But the reality is...
Well, it's a lot messier.
The reality is that the easiest sounding solutions, they often ignore the complex plumbing of modern finance, a system where credibility is really, it's a form of currency itself.
Exactly. So that's our mission in this deep dive. We're going to take a stack of those popular common sense solutions, the ones that feel so logical, and really just dismantle them.
Using real-world economics and a bit of history.
To find out why these easy fixes almost always fail.
And to help us get our heads around this, our sources use a really great analogy. Imagine the government, so the Treasury and the central bank, let's say the Bank of England.
They are like a parent and an adult child. They're sharing a house, their family, they live together, but, and this is the crucial part, they absolutely must keep their finances separate.
For the stability of the whole household.
Precisely.
And we're using that analogy because the biggest political temptation is right there.
Yeah.
Canceling the debt, the government owes its own central bank.
It looks so simple on paper.
Yeah, if the Bank of England owns, 30% of UK government debt, why not just delete it? It looks like the parent owing the adult child.
It's the most aggressive, but also the most tempting idea out there.
Yeah.
But if the parent suddenly just tears up the IOU and says, hey, we're family, I'm canceling this, it immediately triggers what economists call a credibility shock, a really destructive financial event.
Okay, but wait, practically speaking, who really cares? I mean, if the government owes its own bank, isn't it all just public money at the end of the day?
No, and that's the key misunderstanding. It's not just public money. That debt, it represents a critical part of the central bank's balance sheet.
The balance sheet, okay.
When the Bank of England bought those government bonds, during quantitative easing, it didn't use taxpayer money. It created new electronic money reserved out of thin air to purchase them.
Okay, let's unpack that balance sheet thing for a second, because this is the detail that I think most people miss.
It is absolutely crucial. So think of the central bank's balance sheet like a simple ledger. On one side, you have assets. The government bonds it bought are its assets, things it owns.
Right.
But the new money it created to buy them, those reserves, they are on the other side. They're listed as liabilities. It's money the central bank owes to the commercial banks.
Okay, so if the government just says, let's cancel the bonds, what disappears and what's left?
Well, the assets, they just vanish instantly. But the liabilities, all that new money that's now in the system, they remain.
So you're left with a giant hole on the bank's balance sheet.
A colossal, immediate financial hole. It pushes the central bank into insolvency.
And an insolvent central bank, even if it's sort of theoretically backed by the government, that sends a terrible signal to the market, right?
It's a catastrophic signal. It would scream to the world, the government has just forced its independent central bank to print money permanently to pay its bills.
Which is market speak for.
Hyperinflation risk.
Right. And investors, they don't care about the intentions behind the policy. They just react to the signal.
The reaction would be incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And severe. Investors would immediately demand higher interest rates to lend to the UK. Money would just flood out of the pound.
It would tank the currency.
Completely. You'd see long-term inflation risk priced into everything. So canceling the debt doesn't eliminate cost. It just makes all your future costs explode by destroying trust.
That just turns the whole idea on its head. Because the sources point out something else, that canceling the bonds doesn't even save the government money in the end.
Not at all. The Treasury is already legally on the hook for any of the Bank of England's losses. And it still has to pay interest on those reserves, the liabilities that are still sitting there.
So it's the worst of all worlds. You cause a huge crisis of confidence, you destabilize your currency, and you don't even save any money.
You've just made the entire household look financially insane to the rest of the world.
Okay, so if outright cancellation is chaos, that brings us to the big counterexample everyone brings up, Japan.
Always Japan.
Yeah, their national debt it's astronomical, over 250% of their GDP. But they seem fine. So why can't the UK or the US or anyone else just copy their strategy?
It's a great question, but we have to be really clear about what Japan is doing. It is not debt cancellation. It's more like debt suspension.
Suspension.
Yeah, their strategy is debt in permanent, quiet suspension. The Bank of Japan holds almost half of all the government's bonds and just quietly rolls them over forever. They never, ever tear them up.
So the adult child buys the parents' IOUs, never asks for the money back, and just renews them again and again.
That is it, exactly. And they combine this with a policy called yield curve control, YCC.
Right.
The Bank of Japan just steps into the market whenever it needs to keep long-term borrowing costs pinned down, artificially low. It makes sure the parent never gets a scary, sudden bill.
It sounds
Mm-hmm.
pretty stable, actually. So why can't the UK household just do that? Just start doing YCC and roll over its debt quietly? What's so special about Japan?
Japan operates in what you might call a quiet house. The
Mhm.
UK is a much noisier house. There are three huge differences. First, Japan has had decades of ultra-low inflation or even deflation, so markets just don't fear a price spiral.
Okay, that's one. What's the second?
This is the big one. Japan has a massive domestic savings cushion. Over 90% of Japanese government debt is held domestically.
So by Japanese people and Japanese pension funds.
Yes, the money is basically all kept inside the family. The government is paying interest mostly to its own people who have this implicit trust in the system.
And that's the key insight. The whole game works for Japan because the audience, the lenders, are all family.
They're stable, they're aging, they're conservative. Whereas the UK household, it relies so much more on money from outside. International markets, currency traders, foreign countries holding its debt.
Right.
If the UK tried to do what Japan does, those international players would just panic. They'd assume the UK was trying to inflate its way out of trouble.
And you get a run on the pound, investment would collapse.
Right.
All the things YCC was meant to prevent.
Exactly. Japan's quiet domestic structure makes it work. It avoids the very volatility that this kind of policy would trigger in a more open, internationally exposed economy.
Okay, let's move on from those more exotic ideas and talk about two fixes that sound much more responsible.
The austerity traps.
Exactly. Letting inflation chip away at the debt or just stopping borrowing altogether. Now, inflation worked after World War II. Why not now?
It was a helper back then, you're right. But today, it's a trapdoor, and the difference is all about the structure of the debt.
Also.
Post-war debt was mostly long-term war bonds. The government had locked in super low interest rates for decades. So as inflation took off, it was eating away at the real value of that fixed-rate debt.
It was like having a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. Inflation was your friend.
Precisely. But today's debt is overwhelmingly short-term. It rolls over every 3 to 5 years. So as soon as inflation picks up, the central bank, our adult child, is forced to raise interest rates to control it. Which means every few years, the government has to refinance its maturing debt at a dramatically higher rate.
So you're not paying off a fixed mortgage. You're rolling over debt on a high-interest credit card every few years.
Exactly. The attempt to shrink the old debt just backfires because the cost of all your new debt skyrockets.
Yeah.
And that's before you even mention the pain it causes households with their mortgages and their wages. It's just a destructive strategy today.
Okay, so what about the other one? The one that sounds so simple. Just stop borrowing. Live within our means.
It sounds so responsible, doesn't it? But government borrowing, it's a structural necessity. It's a feature, not a flaw, of a modern economy.
What do you mean?
Well, tax receipts go up and down, crises happen, big infrastructure projects need funding over decades, not just 1 year.
So if the parent, in our analogy, just banned all new borrowing tomorrow, what happens to the house?
The house falls apart. I mean, NHS funding would crater, pensions would stop, schools would fail, and crucially, in a recession, government borrowing is the buffer that stops it from spiraling into a full-blown depression. You have to borrow wisely, of course, but stopping it entirely, you eliminate the modern state.
Okay, let's move on to the illusions of easy cash. Selling assets and just, taxing the rich. Selling off state assets, land, utilities, whatever. Seems like a quick way to get cash. Why is that a bad idea?
It's the household selling the car to pay this month's credit card bill. You get a quick hit of cash, sure, but now the asset, the thing that generated value or provided a service, it's gone. And now you have to rent a car or pay a private company for that service, usually at a higher long-term cost. It's a fire sale.
And the sources say it also signals fiscal distress to the markets.
Exactly. Which, ironically, can drive your borrowing costs up anyway. So you sell the family silver, and then the neighbors start charging you more for loans because they think you're desperate.
Now, what about taxing the rich? I think everyone agrees it's important for fairness, but as a debt eradication strategy.
It just comes down to, well, the arithmetic. It fails on the math.
The numbers are just too different.
The scale is completely off. The total government debt is in the trillions. The annual deficit is in the hundreds of billions. Even really dramatic, politically difficult tax hikes on the wealthy might raise, what, tens of billions. It's valuable money for schools or hospitals, for sure, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to the stock of debt.
We are talking about a totally different order of magnitude.
Totally. And on top of that, a lot of that wealth is tied up in things like property or businesses. It's illiquid. You can't just tax it easily without forcing sales that could damage the economy. And if you push too hard, capital is mobile. It leaves.
So it's a really important debate for fairness and political economy, but it's not the magic wand that clears the national debt.
Not even close.
Okay, let's tackle the really popular myth, the one that, it dominates every comment section online. If all the work shy just took the vacant jobs, we wouldn't have a problem.
Ah, yes, that one. It rests on two complete fantasy assumptions.
Which are?
One, that every vacancy is a proper, stable, full-time job. And two, that the people who are long-term sick or disabled are just magically fit and available for work.
And the reality of the job market is very different.
It collapses as soon as you look at it. Today's vacancies are overwhelmingly fragmented. Part-time, temporary, short-hour shifts. There's a reason economists use the term FTE, full-time equivalent. You can't build a stable economy out of little fragments of jobs.
And the data shows this, right? We have rising numbers of people working multiple jobs and still high underemployment, which is people who have a job but desperately want more hours.
The problem is not a shortage of workers. It's a shortage of stable, well-paid job hours. The problem isn't morality, it's the structure of the labor market.
And if you look at where the welfare money actually goes, the whole work-shy narrative just falls apart.
It's completely exposed as a decoy. If you look at spending over the last couple of decades, in real terms, support for people not in work unemployment, disability, it's only gone up modestly.
So who is the actual whale in the room on welfare spending?
It's pensions. The cost of the state pension just dominates everything. It's jumped from around 50 billion pounds to over 81 billion in real terms, just driven by demographics. People are living longer.
It's a math problem, not a morality problem.
Exactly. But the real flashing red light on the dashboard is the huge increase in work support, the government topping up the wages of people who are already working.
And that proves the point. It confirms that the jobs available often don't pay enough or don't provide enough hours for people to live on.
The state has quietly become a massive support system for the working poor.
And here's the aha moment, isn't it? The silent subsidy. When the government tops up those low wages, who is really benefiting?
It's not really the worker in the long run. It's an effective subsidy to employers who don't provide a living wage. It allows shareholders to capture profits while wages stagnate. It props up business models built on insecure, low-hour contracts.
So the taxpayer is footing the bill for a low-wage business model, all while the work-shy narrative serves as a convenient distraction.
That's it. The problem isn't lazy people. The problem is that the jobs on offer are too often fragmented or too poorly paid to support a stable life.
So after all of that, after dismantling all these dead ends, canceling debt is chaos, copying Japan is impossible, austerity is self-defeating, what actually works? What has historically reduced government debt?
The history on this is remarkably clear. There is only one thing that reliably and sustainably reduces the government's debt-to-GDP ratio.
And that is?
Investment-driven economic growth. It's that simple. You have to look at the formula. Debt to GDP. It's debt divided by GDP. Every successful country in history has focused on option B. Expand the denominator. Make the GDP bigger.
That's the only way to make that ratio shrink without creating total chaos.
So let's look at the textbook case. After World War II, UK debt was at what, 250% of GDP? Insane. How did they get it down to 50%?
They didn't pay it down. They followed the formula. Borrow, invest, and then grow. They borrowed and invested massively in people with the new National Health Service and mass education, in infrastructure with new towns, modernizing the railways.
All funded by more borrowing.
Yes.
Yes.
And the result? Economic growth ran at a steady 3 to 4% a year for decades. The actual amount of debt didn't fall much, but the economy, the GDP, grew so much faster than the debt did.
So a bigger economy means more tax revenue without even raising rates. Exactly. And the burden of that old debt just became smaller and smaller relative to the size of the national income. The U.S. did the exact same thing with the GI Bill and the interstate highway system.
And that is the paradox that I think is so crucial for you to grasp. To reduce your debt long term, You often have to borrow more in the short term, but for strategic investments.
For things that boost productivity, infrastructure, R&D, education, austerity is the opposite. It shrinks the economy and actually makes the debt ratio worse because you're starving the denominator.
They're cutting off your own limbs to save money on food.
That's a great way to put it. Investment is the household buying a new, better oven and sending the kids for training so the total family income goes up.
Right. The strong household doesn't starve itself. It invests in the house, the tools, the people, until its income rises and makes that old debt feel manageable.
It's the only way that has ever worked.
So bringing it all together, we've learned that canceling central bank debt is a recipe for financial chaos, that Japan's strategy relies on unique conditions you just can't copy-paste.
And that popular fixes like inflation or asset sales actually end up weakening the economy in the long run.
The ultimate takeaway seems to be that you cannot cut your way to prosperity. You have to build your way there.
The only reliable path is strategic, growth-focused investment, which has to be funded by borrowing.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. If all of history shows that borrowing to invest is the only proven way to shrink the debt burden, why does the UK, and frankly many Western governments, invest less in their own future today than almost every other advanced economy?
That gap between what we know works and what we actually choose to do, that might be the real debt problem we need to confront.